You're listening to the Filipino Food Channel, an interview series hosted by Red Smith and Marie Urquidi and brought to you by Seafood City Supermarket's The Filipino Food Channel.
Our mission is to educate and celebrate Filipino culture. The views and opinions expressed in this recording are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the entities they represent.
So let's get into it. Let's get in touch with Filipino culture through the one way we know best, through food.
Award-winning chef and restaurateur Tom Cunanan was born in the Philippines and was raised in Maryland. His culinary career launched to national fame as the founding chef of a restaurant in Washington, D.C. named Bad Saint.
We will be talking about his upbringing, his career, and of course his modern take on Filipino food.
Hey Red, hi Marie.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me to talk about modern Filipino food on Filipino Food Channel.
So the dishes you created for Bad Saint caught the attention of many food critics, foodies, and of course the James Beard Foundation. And their awards are like the Oscars for the food world, for those who don't know. And you were nominated consecutively 3 times. And on the third year in 2019, you were awarded the Best Chef in Mid-Atlantic, which is significant, especially for the Filipino-American community, because Filipino food isn't seen as a sophisticated dining experience.
You know, I never imagined I would get an award. I want to thank the James Beard Foundation for recognizing my work. I'm very proud of the work everyone at Bad Saint did for the years we were open until we finally shut down due to COVID. But I'm looking forward to doing it again. Can't wait.
Chef, what is your definition of modern Filipino food?
I mean, for me, modern Filipino food is like, for example, taking regional dishes and trying to put your twist using ingredients here in the US and almost like mimicking the same dish in the Philippines.
Was Bad Saint the first Filipino restaurant you ever worked in?
Yeah, it was my first venture at a Filipino restaurant. I didn't want it just to be just lumpia and chicken adobo. Like I wanted to implement like my mom's cooking, like niswa, beef soup, tuna tambakol from Davao, like grilled tuna tail. Something more like vegetable seafood driven, not very meat heavy.
You know, what's interesting is that I think that's the biggest complaint non-Filipinos have about Filipino food is that they don't think that it's fresh or there's enough vegetables.
I mean, my house was different, and every Filipino has their own story, right? Like how they grow up, and we're all same but different.
You grew up with a home garden, correct?
Yeah, mom
So
grew everything, almost everything. She would go to the backyard, grab whatever she needed, and then she would make pinakbet using that same squash, same eggplant, and then she would take the leaves from the ampalaya and she would throw that in the nilaga or bulalo. She used everything in that garden.
So let's go back to Bad Saint because you had this job to create a menu essentially. How long did that take? And how did you decide what was going to go on your menu?
So prior to opening Bad Saint, I had maybe 30 menus ready. I didn't know how to make up my mind. I want that first impression to be the best impression when people walk in and see Filipino food. And they're like, oh my God, like I haven't seen this before ever on a Filipino menu. And I wanted to like blow people's mind away. When they walked in my restaurant, they're like, oh, okay, it's not like your typical Filipino restaurant.
What adjustment did you make in your menu to serve a wider audience?
Genevieve, the owner of Bad Saint, she was very like adamant about like making sure that the menu was like, okay, it's got to have vegetables, it's got to have seafood, it's got to have meats, but the more vegetables, the better.
Your dish, I'm going to talk specifically about your fried rice. And in this picture that I have, you are using crab fat. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
talk about your dish.
Because in Maryland, I'm a Maryland kid. We love getting Maryland blue crabs. So when you pop one open, like the hood, it's like smothered in crab fat. And as a Filipino, the way I used to eat blue crabs, we would take out all the meat off the crabs, and then we would throw the crab in white rice, and then mix it with spicy vinegar, and then take the crab fat mix it with the rice, the crab meat and vinegar, and you get that perfect bite of like, oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, I grew up eating crab fat like that too. Is that why you incorporated it into your fried rice?
Back to that inspiration, the crab fried rice was I went to the Philippines back in 2015, and Chef Cloud Tayag was the one who introduced me to crab fat from Pampanga, and in Pampanga, crab fat is called tabat ng talangka, which talangka is like the small crabs that are native in Pampanga. He was showcasing it at Manila Fusion back in 2015, and it was umami. It was just like so unique. So the inspiration was like, how am I going to bring crab fat to Bad Saints? Well, being a Maryland kid, use blue crabs, and I'm a big fan of fried rice. So it was super rich.
I've never seen a picture like that before that says that's Filipino food. Like,
Yeah.
what was the reaction from Filipinos?
There was only like maybe like a small pocket of Filipinos that were like slowly discovering what crab fat was back in 2018. And I got to say, I mean, I think I paved the way for that. I paved the way to have that on menus today. Like I see crab fat everywhere now.
What was the most popular dish at Bad Saint?
I think the yellow adobo was one of our best sellers at Bat Saint. It was like this Batanga style yellow turmeric coconut chicken adobo. Adobong sa Dilaw. So it comes in a clay pot. And then when you have it like in the wintertime, when it's cold outside, and then we bring this clay pot of like yellow adobo to you, and when we open the lid, like it's just fragrant. You can smell the coconut, the turmeric, the smoke from the grilled chicken, and the burnt coconut. And then when you bite into it, it just feels like someone's like kissing you from the inside.
Filipino Americans may not be as educated about Filipino food, partly because we don't learn about it, we just eat it. And so I know you had some weird feedback after Adobo sa Dilaw was featured in online. Can you talk
Yeah.
to us a little bit about the reception you had, good and bad?
Yeah, so the good was like that everyone loved the dish, and it's very uncommon to a lot of fill lambs that um, adobo has coconut milk and turmeric and vegetables. So when Bon Appetit published the recipe for adobo dilaw, a lot of the comments were so negative. It was just like, adobo shouldn't have coconut milk. It shouldn't have turmeric. Why does it have squash? And I'm like, bro, like really, like do your research, man. And and there's also a story on the article that says this is a regional adobo from Batangas. They just assume they see it, and they're like, no, that's not Filipino.
Mhm.
And you know what? The Philippines, they beg to differ because they backed me up. They said that's actually legit a regional adobo from the Philippines, from a particular region, which is Batangas. I was so proud. I was so happy that they did that.
Yeah,
I was
you
like,
need
in
some
your face,
backup.
Philams.
To defend some Philams, because particularly I am second generation,
Hmm.
and I think learning about our culture does require some effort to learn about what Filipino culture is, food, music, language. I mean, that takes a lot of effort. So
Right.
let's talk about a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
You were born in the Philippines and came to Maryland when you were 4 years old and had to
Hmm.
learn English. So
Hmm.
tell us what that was like growing up for you.
Well, I'm still learning English. No, I'm kidding. I grew up in Maryland, D.C. Most of my friends were like Jamaican, West African, Spanish. They didn't know what Filipino food was. So they came over and my mom would feed them like, hey, this is chicken adobo. And then this is lumpia. This is our pancit. And they loved it.
Did you ever have a moment where your parents didn't want non-Filipinos over because they were afraid of the smell? Did
Oh,
they ever feel like they couldn't cook at some point?
I think for me, the only thing I try to avoid for them to smell was Paksiu. It's like vinegary. It smells like to some people, if you're an American or non-Filipino, they're gonna think, man, that smells like feet,
Mm.
you know? And other than that, they love the food.
What is one of your memories eating Filipino food at home?
I remember when I was just like a little kid, like a little baby, my mom would like soup bowl me like fried fish and then rice, and then she would make a salad with like Maggi dressing with cilantro, tomatoes, and red onions, and she would just take it and then she would feed me like and just soup bowl.
Mm.
Like, that means like hand feed you in Tagalog.
Which Filipino dish brings back fond memories of your mom?
Her Filipino spaghetti. Yeah, that's the one that hits home. She did it her own way. She cooked it with ground beef, and she didn't buy the Filipino spaghetti sauce that you could find at the grocery store, at the Filipino grocery store. It was her own way, and I don't know how she did it. Whenever I make it, I do it by memory, just like trying to get it to be like 99% right. But I know I'm only doing it like 85%.
As a teen, you were a member of the Boys and Girls Club, and they were able to find you your first job. Tell us about it.
So I started as a busboy, dishwasher when I was 16, 17 years old. It was at this French restaurant downtown DC, and I remember the chef. His name's Tom Powers. He was till this day, present day, like he still to me is like top 10 best chefs I've ever seen in my life. So I worked for him as a busboy after school. The hardest job ever for a 16-year-old.
Hmm.
And because the reason why I'm seeing it is because everything is so particular how they want things to be, because it's a French restaurant. They want their towels to be folded differently. They want the bread to be cut a certain way, and the way you bring the plate to the table, you have to make sure that the plates are hot. If they aren't hot, then you have to set it back. And
Wow.
mind you, I'm a 16-year-old kid. My hands are like delicate, and I don't know what it feels like to hold a hot plate until I started working there. The positive thing that came out of that kitchen was that I saw how militant Chef Tom Powers was, and I thought that was really cool. And then one day he gave me some leftover fries from his kitchen, and it was like in a hotline, just like a bowl of fries that they house cut themselves, and it was like sea salt with like a little bit of parsley. And I remember getting a bowl of it. Chef goes, "Hey Tom, try these fries out."
Hmm.
Took a bite, and I remember looking up. I remember like looking up the ceiling, and I'm like, "Oh my god, these are the best fries I ever had in my life." And I told myself like, I want to learn how to make these fries. So that was like the spark of like, okay, this is like the goal. The first goal I thought like in life was like, I want to recreate these fries.
And have you since created those fries?
No,
It was
but
made
it's
with
still
duck fat.
there.
I'm kidding.
I don't know. He's got a secret, but this job that I got from the Boys and Girls Club with Chef Tom Powers, like that really triggered everything. And that's when I was like, okay. I told my mom I wanted to go to culinary school, and it made my
What?
mom happy.
So, your mom was happy with your choice of career.
Yeah, she was so ecstatic. She was like, "You want to cook?" I'm like, "All right, I got you." Because I think my mom, she wanted to pursue cooking when she was younger too. But everyone told her you have to be a nurse because it's
Yeah.
it's your destiny as a Filipino woman. It's like I could tell my mom she really enjoyed cooking, and our family, even her sisters, her brothers, my mom's side, like they loved her cooking. Everyone loved her cooking.
Your mom was such an instrumental figure in your career. Like most Filipinos, we're very family oriented. I was sad to hear your mom was diagnosed with cancer.
It was after culinary school, and it was prior to Bad Saint.
Oh.
But um, I think she passed away in 2014, and Bad Saint opened in 2015.
You had created a special project between you and your mom. Tell us about it.
So while my mom was going through her first treatment, and then in her last, like I gave her, in the middle of her treatments, I gave her like a set of moleskin books for her to like write recipes. And when she did, she was watching TFC, but and she's watching TV. She's like, oh yeah, like like and like that dish. Oh yeah, I had that dish in the Philippines before, and I think I have a recipe for that. And my mom would just write recipes all day long. And then sometimes she would write like her non-Filipino recipes, like chicken casserole. Like stuff, like like housewife like recipes, like she read it like on a Betty Crocker recipe. She's like, oh yeah, like I like this recipe. You liked it too when you were a kid. I'll put that down there, just in case if you need it.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
lovely.
yeah, she was super thoughtful. And she knew like cooking was like what's going to be my career for the rest of my life, and she was extremely supportive of it. And when I started a catering company back when I was 25 years old, it was called Tarsier. And she gave me a pan de sal recipe. She gave me a lechon
Oh,
recipe. Did it
wow.
go on? Adobo. And I was doing adobo tofu.
Oh, wow.
She gave me all those recipes to jumpstart my Filipino cooking career.
We've talked so much about your mom, but we never said anything about your dad. Is there anything you want to mention that maybe inspired or helped your career?
My dad loved to eat too. He loves eating fast food.
So, this other restaurant, Pogi Boy,
Yeah.
was that a way to just kind of capture sort of that fast food, quick dining experience?
So during the pandemic, I wanted to somehow bring back Filipino food like during the worst time. And so I thought, hey, let's try doing something like affordable, unique.
By the way, Pogi, Pogi, in Tagalog means handsome. Tell us why you named your restaurant Pogi Boy.
My partner at the time, Paulo Donka, he just opened Haraya in DC, and he's got like the best Filipino restaurant in DC right now. It's amazing. We were partners at the time, and the name Pogi Boy came from like our parents or our aunts, our uncles that said, "Hey, Pogi, kumusta na? Hey, Pogi, ano ba? San ang tatay mo? Hey, Pogi, san ang nanay mo?" So, that name kind of stuck to us, and we were like, you know what? Let's call this Pogi Boy. And it was fun. It was a fun concept, but it had to end short because, like I said, COVID just ruins everything.
It was such an unfortunate time period and
Yeah,
really a time for experimentation, I think. I think
yeah.
everyone had to adjust.
Mm.
Restaurants took a particular hit, but it's amazing that you opened one during the pandemic. I think I mean, that's something to be really proud of. I loved one item on your menu, which was the Filipino Fiesta Spaghetti, which was Filipino spaghetti made with Gouda cheese. Like, oh
Yeah,
my God.
it was amazing. You can't open a Filipino fast food joint if you don't have Filipino spaghetti on your menu. That's just, it's a given. You have to have it.
So I want to fast forward because that was in DC and you are now in Houston and you have Soy Pinoy with another James Beard award winning chef, Paul Kui. And for full transparency, Red and I were at the grand opening of Seafood City in Texas back in December and we got a chance to try your food.
You have such wonderful creations, but I thought it was still more traditional.
So Soy Pinoy is like my introduction to Filipino food here in Houston.
How long have you been there?
I've only been here for about 2 years now, and I wanted to make sure that I needed to get a feel of the clientele here. So I started off with the basics.
What was the sauce that you have? Is it squid ink?
Oh yeah, man, that's a very Tom Cunanan dish right there.
Yeah.
So I created this squid adobo where you take squid. So
Mm.
I take squid adobo, tomatoes, habang sili, which is long peppers in the Philippines, a lot of garlic, onions, and I cook it down to a stew. And then I blend the stew with vinegar, salt, pepper. It's rich, it's addicting to eat. And then you have fried calamari. It's
Mm.
so Filipino, but it doesn't look Filipino. And I think the menu we have today, it's great. It's eclectic.
I know you have an exciting project coming up. What can you tell us?
This project would be called Hermes. Hermes is named after my mother. It's going to be the first high-end Filipino seafood in the country here in Houston, Texas.
What is your mom's full name?
So my mom's full name is Herminia. She goes by the nickname Hermie. So I thought, hey, Hermes would be perfect for my next project. She's also pescatarian and she loved vegetables and think that that's fitting for the new concept.
So, what's your vision for Hermes?
Like we want it to be like the ultimate Filipino seafood restaurant. Like it's like going to the Filipino wet markets, getting fresh seafood and vegetables, and then telling us to cook it right in front of you. That's kind of like what I imagine the restaurant to be like. We want it to be elegant. We want it to be upscale, like fun. I can go on.
For Filipino Americans, I feel like we're really looking for that experience.
Yeah, make it Filipino chef-driven, progressive Filipino food. It's not often every day you hear about a Filipino seafood restaurant that's like that.
It sounds really interesting. And if somebody wanted to partner up with you on that, how would they go about it?
If anyone is interested in being part of this project, just contact me.
It's great to hear that drive and passion you have for cooking. What would you say is one of your biggest compliments so far?
I just remember like back when I was at Bad Saint, people would just leave dinner and say, "This was like the most incredible meal I've ever had in my life, and I can't wait to come back." I mean, that melts my heart.
Yes.
You know? And like, that makes me kind of want to cry every time I hear that. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, like
Let's go full circle for a moment. What do you make of your whole career at this point?
it's a really overwhelming achievement getting this far in my career. But I feel like I'm not. I feel like it's not enough yet. I feel like I have some more time. Keep with it with the movement, with the Filipino food movement. Like at this point right now, it doesn't even feel like work anymore. It feels like a hobby. It feels like the one lifelong thing I want to do for the rest of my life is to keep cooking Filipino food and be part of like a community of Filipino chefs, people who are interested in our cuisine culture. I get to be a part of like a bigger community.
Chef Tom, it's been a pleasure getting to know you better, and we certainly have welcomed you into our Seafood City community. Thank you for sharing with us the story about your life, sharing your views, and of course, your food.
Thank you for having me on the show. It was a pleasure. I hope the listeners are inspired to support Filipino restaurants, not just for me, but from the amazing chefs all over the world. Also, if you're in the Houston area, you can visit me at Soy Pinoy, located at the Post in downtown.
Tom Cunanan is a Filipino-American chef currently in Houston, Texas. You can find Soy Pinoy at the Post inside Houston, which is about 20 miles away from Seafood City in Sugar Land. And Tom's food story is not yet complete, so you can follow him on Instagram at Tom C. Cunanan for updates on his restaurants and pop-ups.
The following presentation is a production of the Filipino Food Channel. This episode was hosted by Red Smith and Marie Urquidi. Title of the music is Life Today by Robert Mirnick.
Podcast was edited for time and content by Marie Urquidi. Video and graphics by Butch Villanueva and Mikey Thomas. Produced by Seafood City Supermarket, the largest Filipino supermarket in North America. Visit seafoodcitysupermarket.com. Be sure to like and follow our YouTube channel for more stories.